So I'm continuing on with reading the Mabinogion to my cat Eddie. Um, I'm going to start with, "Yes, Lord," answered Owain, "thou hast slept a while. Is it time for us to go to meat?" "It is, Lord," said Owain. Then the horn for washing was sounded, and the king and all his household sat down to eat. And then, when the meal had ended, Owain withdrew to his lodging and made ready his horse and his arms. On the morrow, with the dawn of day, he put on his armour and mounted his charger, and travelled through distant lands and over desert mountains. At length he arrived at the valley which Kynon had described to him. He was certain that it was the same that he had sought, and journeying along the valley, by the side of the river, he followed its course until he came to the plain and within the sight of the castle. When he approached the castle, he saw the youths shooting their daggers in the place where Kynon had seen them, and the yellow man whom the castle belonged standing hard by there. And no sooner had Owain saluted the yellow man than he was saluted by him in return. So he went forward towards the castle, and there he saw the chamber, and when he entered the chamber he beheld the maidens working at the satin embroidery in chairs of gold, and their beauty and their comeliness seemed to Owain far greater than Kynon had presented to him. They rose to wait upon Owain, as they had done to Kynon, and the meal which they set before him gave more satisfaction to Owain than it had done to what Kynon had described. About the middle of the repast the yellow man asked Owain the object of his journey, and Owain, made it unknown to him, said, "I am in quest of the knight who guards the fountain." Upon this the man smiled, and said that he was loath to point out the adventure to Owain, just as it had been described. However, he described the whole thing to Owain, and they retired to rest. The next morning Owain found his horse had been made ready by him by the damsels, and he set forward and came to the glade where the man was, and the statue of the man seemed more wonderful to Owain than it had been said to him, and Owain asked him of the road, and he showed it to him. And Owain followed this road just as Kynon had done, until he came to the green tree and beheld the fountain, and the slab beside the fountain with the bowl upon it. Owain took the bowl and drew a bowlful of water upon the slab, and lo, the thunder was heard, and after the thunder came the shower, more violent than had been described, and after the shower the tree became bright. And then when Owain looked at the tree, there was not one leaf upon it, and immediately the birds came and settled upon the tree and sang. And when the song was sung, it was most pleasing to Owain. He beheld a knight coming towards him through the valley, and he prepared to receive him, and encountered him violently. Having broken both their lances, they drew their swords and fought blade to blade, clashing their swords. Then Owain struck the knight a blow through his helmet, headpiece and visor, and through the skin and the flesh and the bone until it wounded the very brain. Then the knight felt that he had received a mortal wound, upon which he returned his horse's head and fled. Owain pursued him and followed close upon him, although he was not near enough to strike him with the sword. So he's a better knight than Kynon. Thereupon Owain described a vast and resplendent castle, and they came to this castle gate. The Black Knight was allowed to enter, and the portcullis was let fall upon Owain, and it struck his horse behind the saddle, and cut him in two, carrying away the rowels of the spurs that were upon Owain's heels, and the portcullis ascended to the floor. The rowels of the spurs and part of the horse were without Owain, and Owain on the other part of the horse remained between the two gates, and the inner gate was closed, so Owain could not go thence, and Owain was in such a perplexing situation. While he was in this state he could see through an aperture in the gate. So an aperture is a little hole, a street facing him with a row of horses on each side, a row of houses on each side, and he beheld a maiden with her yellow curling hair and a frontlet of gold upon her head. She was clad in a dress of yellow satin, and on her feet were shoes of variegated leather, and she approached the gate and desired that it should be opened. "Heaven knows, lady," said Owain, "it is no more possible for me to open thee from thence, than it is for me to set myself free." "Truly," said the damsel, "it is very sad that thou cannot be released, and every lady ought to scurre thee, for I never saw one more faithful in the service of ladies than thou. As a friend thou art the most sincere, and as a lover the most devoted." Bit full on. "Therefore," quoth she, "whatever is in my power to do for thy release, I will do it. Take this ring and put it on thy finger, with the stone inside thy hand, and close thy hand upon the stone, and as long as thou concealed it, it will conceal thee." That's quite interesting. That's kind of like the Tolkien Lord of the Ring idea of a magical ring. Anyway, when they have consulted together, they will come forth to fetch thee, in order to put thee to death, and they will be much aggrieved that they cannot find thee, and I will wait thee on the horse block yonder. Thou wilt be able to see me, though I cannot see thee. Therefore come and place thy hand upon my shoulder, so that I may know that thou art near me, and by the way that I go hence thou wilt accompany me." She went away from Owain, and he did all that the maiden had told him. The people of the castle came to seek Owain to put him to death, and when they found nothing but half of his horse, they were sorely aggrieved. And Owain vanished from among them, and went to the maiden, placing his hand upon her shoulder, whereupon she set off, and Owain followed her until they came to the door of a large and beautiful chamber, and the maiden opened it, and they went in, closing the door. Owain looked around the chamber, and behold, there was not even a single nail in it that was not painted with gorgeous colours, and there was not a single panel that had not sundry images in gold portrayed upon it. The maiden kindled a fire, and took water in a silver bowl, and put a towel of white linen on her shoulder, and gave Owain water to wash. Then she placed before him a silver table inlaid with gold, upon which there was a cloth of yellow linen, and she brought him food. While I'm reading this, I'm really thinking of Monty Python, because they always have in their films, the ones about the knights anyway, these sort of ridiculous scenarios where the knight goes through a load of trial, and then he's this sort of golden chamber with these beautiful women in it, and it's probably come from the Mabinogion. It's kind of like in there it's a joke, and it does feel a little bit like a joke reading this, I have to admit. But anyway, we'll get back to the story. And of a truth Owain had never seen any kind of meat that was not there in abundance, but it was better cooked there than he had ever found it in any other place. Nor did he ever see so excellent a display of meat and drink as there was there. And there was not one vessel from which he was served that was not of gold or of silver. And Owain ate and drank until late in the afternoon, when lo, they heard a mighty clamour in the castle, and Owain asked the maiden what the outcry was. "They are administering extreme there's a missing word here. To the nobleman who owns the castle," and Owain went to sleep. Oh, correction, missing out of over. "They are administering extreme uncorrection to the nobleman who owns the castle," and Owain went to sleep. The couch which the maiden had prepared for him was met for Arthur himself. It was of scarlet and fur, and satin and senel and fine linen. In the middle of the night they heard a woeful outcry. "What is the outcry again?" said Owain, The nobleman who owned the castle is now dead, said the maiden, and a little after daybreak they heard an exceedingly loud clamour and wailing. Owen asked the maiden what was the cause of it. They are bearing to the church the body of the nobleman who owned the castle. Owen rose up and clothed himself, opening the window of the chamber and looked towards the castle. He could see neither the bounds nor the extent of the hosts that filled the streets. They were fully armed, and a vast number of women were there with them, both on horseback and on foot. All the ecclesiastics in the city were singing. Ecclesiastics are religious people, and it seemed to Owen that the sky resounded with the vehemence of their cries. I'd say vehemence is the emotion, and with the noise of the trumpets and with the singing of the ecclesiastics. In the midst of the throng he beheld the bier, over which a veil of white linen and wax tapers were burning beside and around it. A nun that supported the bier was lower in rank than a powerful baron. Yes. I have never heard that or seen that word before. Right, okay. Bier. Like it's in the German. So that's a movable frame on which a coffin or corpse is placed before burial or cremation, which, I don't think is really done anymore. So there we go. Never did Owen see an assemblage so gorgeous with satin and silk and senile, and following the train he beheld a lady with yellow hair falling over her shoulders, stained with blood. About her was a dress of yellow satin which was torn. Upon her feet were shoes of variegated leather, and it was a marvel that the ends of her fingers were not bruised from the violence which she smote her hands together. Truly she would have been the fairest lady Owen had ever saw had she been in her usual guise. Her cry was louder than the shout of the men or the clamour of the trumpets. No sooner had he beheld the lady than he became inflamed with her love, so it took entire possession of him. When he inquired of the maiden who the lady was, the maiden replied, Heaven knows, she may be said to be the fairest, the most chaste, and the most liberal, and the wisest, and the most noble of women, and she is my mistress. She is called the Countess of the Fountain, the wife of whom didst slay yesterday. Thou didst slay yesterday. Verily, said Owen, she is the woman that I love best. Verily, said the maiden, she shall also love thee not a little. And with that the maiden rose and kindled a fire, and filled it with a pot of water, and placed it to come to warm. She brought a towel of white linen, and placed it around Owen's neck. She took a goblet of ivory and a silver basket, filling them with warm water, wherein she washed Owen's head. She opened a wooden casket, and drew forth a razor, whose half was of ivory, and upon which there were 2 rivets of gold. And she shaved his beard, and she dried his throat with a towel. Then she rose up from before Owain, and brought him to eat. And truly Owain had never so good a meal, nor as he was so well served. It's kind of like, it's quite repetitive, I'm finding a little bit here. It's like, have they never eaten food before? Before they've gone on these quests or something. Anyway, when he had finished his repast, the maiden arranged his couch. Come here, said she, and sleep. I will go and woo for thee. And Owen went to sleep, and the maiden shut the door of the chamber after her, and went towards the castle. When she came there, she found nothing but mourning and sorrow. The countess in her chamber could not bear the sight of anyone through grief. Luned came and saluted her. Luned's the name. But the countess answered her not, and the maiden bent down towards her and said, What aileth thee, thou answerest no one to-day? Luned, said the countess, what change hath befallen thee, that thou hast not come to visit me in my grief? It was wrong in thee, and having made thee rich, It was wrong in thee thou did not come to see me in my distress. It was wrong in thee. Truly, said Luned, and I thought thy good sense was greater than I find it to be. Is it well for thee to mourn after that good man, or for anything else that thou canst not have? I declare to heaven, said the Countess, that in the whole world there is not a man equal to him. Not so, said Luned, for an ugly man would be as good or as better than he. I declare to heaven, said the Countess, that were it not repugnant to me to cause thee to be put to death, one whom I have brought up, I would have thee executed, for making such a comparison to me. As it is, I will banish thee. I am glad, said Luned, that thou hast no other cause to do so, than that I would have been of service to thee where thou didst not know what was to thine advantage. Henceforth evil betide whichever of us shall make the first advance towards reconciliation to the other, whether I should seek an invitation from thee, or thou of thine own accord thou send to invite me. And with that Luned went forth, and the Countess rose and followed her to the door of the chamber, and began coughing loudly. When Luned looked back, the Countess beckoned to her, and she returned to the Countess. In truth, said the Countess, evil is thy disposition, but if thou knowest what it is to my advantage, declare it to me. I will do so, quoth she. Thou knowest that except by warfare and arms it is impossible for thee to preserve thy possessions. Delay not, therefore, to seek someone who can defend them. And how can I do that, said the Countess? I will tell thee. Unless thou canst defend the fountain, thou canst not maintain thy dominions, and no one can defend the fountain except it be a knight of Arthur's household. And I will go to Arthur's court, and ill betide me if I return thence without a warrior who can guard the fountain as well as, or even better, than he who defended it formerly. That will be hard to perform, said the Countess. Go, however, and make proof of which thou hast promised. I think I'm going to stop here because I'm finding it really difficult. There was a section where I think it's how they've translated it. It just had lots of ands and thens, which I had to skip out because they were like kind of pointless. So I wonder if this is a bit of a bad translation. But yeah, I'm going to stop and continue another time because I'm struggling with it.